and it was almost like there had been a problem. Now, whatever happened last night, which I am totally against, breaking into buildings, marking up city halls, I am totally against that. But there was none of that today. And I kept saying to the officers, do not excite them. Do not excite them. Maybe a handful of young folks got in the street. Most of them had moved away. Before we knew it, the bikes were going up against a young sister standing next to me. A gentleman was knocked to the ground. And then you know what happens. People start pushing and shoving. I got caught in the middle of it. President of City Council, Shannon Harden, was there, who had been doing an amazing job. We both, Shannon more than I, was pepper sprayed. Commissioner Kevin Boyce was able to pull me away and get me to a safer space. But the message we want to have is we need to be in this together. We need to be fighting against the injustices, fighting against racism. And tensions are high when you think about George Floyd. But when you are out there and you come in an antagonistic way, it only excites a riot. So the only thing I'm asking people to do is from both sides. We cannot tear up our city, but we cannot be in charge as trained officers and come and antagonize people, because what you're going to get is what we saw at the end of the march.
And Representative, I did see your social media post with City Council President Shannon Harden saying you're both okay. So glad to hear that. How did this exactly come apart, and how are you feeling now?
I am okay. Lots of olive oil and milk has helped pepper spray. I've never had that experience before, and I was able to just be up close. And I was there because I wanted the young protesters to know that in solidarity that I stand with them. You know, I'm a grandmother, I'm an elected official, but I'm a black woman first, and I felt the pain. So I was there on the edge of the sidewalk when it all happened, wanting to support and feeling the need to protect this young sister that was big. She was very vocal, but that's freedom of speech. She, you know, so to push and shove and use a bicycle against her, I just think there could have been a better way.
Mm-hmm. And I know you've already said that you don't condone what happened last night, but it appears these protesters are going to continue tonight, possibly. What's your message to them?
Well, I think my message to them is there's a difference in protesting and standing up against justices. But if you're going to be out there causing injustices and destroying properties and looting and doing any of those things, that it is more destructive. And that's not the way we gain what we're all in this for, and that's to bring justice. So it's like two rights don't make a wrong. Now, I'm all for the protesting, the freedom of speech, sit-ins, marching, the bullhorns. I'll be the first to stand with them. But we cannot tear up our own communities and our own buildings, because that's not going to accomplish anything. And what they want to do is to sit down and talk about these issues, and they need to see change. We need change, you know, and this is not just in Columbus, Ohio. This is across the country. But if I can be a U.S. member of Congress and can't have a dialogue with those who are supposed to protect me and to be able to smooth things over, that's problematic for me. That's problematic. You know, you cannot come to protect me and excite those young people. And if you listen to a part of the video that part of my staffing took, I am saying repeatedly, don't excite them. And at that time, the people were all on the sidewalk. Don't come hollering and exciting them. We only had 15 minutes or so to go.
And Representative Beatty, you mentioned that there was a young female protester that was sort of part of this incident, and that you and Councilmember Harden sort of intervened. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes, as the officers on bicycles using their bicycles as shields started to approach, they were asking people to stay on the sidewalk. I had no problem with that. So Shannon Hardin and I had been very successful of getting everyone on the sidewalk, still allowing them to use their freedom of speech. And there were a few of the officers, if your toe was on the sidewalk, was off the sidewalk, they just were too aggressive for a crowd that was already excited and a crowd that was already hurting and fighting for their rights. And so she was very verbal, but she was right in protesting and being that way. But the moment that she got louder and a foot went off the curb, the bicycle he took the bicycle and went right up into her. I felt, maybe it was motherly instinct. I felt I had to try to grab her, protect her, hold her, because, see, I am seasoned and old enough to know what was going to happen next. I knew if this young African-American female was harmed or beaten, I could not stand there and not try to defend her, and nor would the hundreds and hundreds of people, black and white, young and old, standing with me.
And if I may, I'm guessing or assuming that young protester was also had pepper spray or mace used on them. Do you know how she's doing?
I don't, but there were several people in one of the photos that someone sent me. There was an officer that was less than 8 inches away from another young female pepper spraying her. The pepper spray was prolific. I don't remember hearing anyone saying move or we're going to pepper spray. It just all of a sudden, and what was unfortunate, Councilman Hardin received the brunt of it, and he was in the middle of the sidewalk. So my problem also is, if you're going to pepper spray, be out in the street and aiming at those who are wrong if you had to do that. I don't think the pepper spray was even necessary.
And so what I'm hearing is that there was no warning here. You did say that the protester was off the sidewalk a little bit, but Shannon Hardin was not, you were not. There was no warning here?
I heard no warning. Obviously, if someone had said and held up a pepper spray and said, I'm a pepper spray, we would have moved. Nobody wants to be pepper sprayed, trust me.
Wow. Well, we're glad you're doing well, and thanks so much for taking the time to chat with us. You've already touched on this before, but this is not going to be the last of these protests, we think. You are just giving us a message of you want them to continue to be peacefully.
I definitely I beg the protesters to not tear up buildings, not break out windows. Do not try to make that the answer for what we're fighting for. We do want justice. We do want to eradicate the racism. We do want to make sure that we can work together because too many senseless lives are being taken. And you have to understand that we are all hurting. And this is not just African Americans. There were more majority young folks and older adults out there. The diversity was amazing with the people who were out there pleading. There were so many signs with I can't breathe. There were signs eradicate racism, remove the injustices for killing people. This was well organized and thought through. It was so well that I took pictures of signs more than people, so I was hopeful that this afternoon I would be able to put all of those signs up on my website and say, this is what we're fighting for. Instead, I'm soaking my face in milk and olive oil to stop my eyes from burning.
Wow. And as I believe that we actually just got some video into the station of this exact incident, or we're working on getting that video. It sounds like this all happened very quickly.
It was in a matter of seconds, it seemed. One moment I'm begging and saying, don't excite. I think I said it 3 times in one of the videos, face to face to the officers. Don't excite them, because we were all on the sidewalk and the police came and they were being forceful, like you must stay on the sidewalk, and getting into people's faces with the young folks who were on the sidewalk.
Wow.
And that was my issue. It wasn't my issue with the police being there. Police are supposed to be there to protect me. And I felt myself protecting the young folks.
Wow. And thank you again so much for chatting with us.
Thank you so much.
We're now looking at live pictures here on the air of the protests that continue. Do you plan on continuing to march with these people peacefully?
You know, I am all about standing with them in a peaceful march. I'm going to meet with some young protesters, some elected officials, some members of clergy, and others tomorrow to talk about what we do next. Maybe it is staging a rally for justice and educating people on how we can come to a better resolve.
And I know this is all very early. It just happened, as you mentioned, this afternoon. Is there anything in particular that you're thinking about that you would want to see happen with this particular officer or group of officers who are involved here with Columbus Police?
Well, I haven't talked with the chief of police or anyone yet. First I just needed to get home and get the pepper spray off. But certainly I have intentions of talking to them. How do we resolve this? I know they have a job to do. I've been advised how they are trained. I probably don't agree with some of that. I'm all for coming in riot mode if there is a riot. I find it very problematic when you are agitating and instigating when, in my opinion, there was no need for that. This is a young sister fighting for justice with her words. There was no sign. There was no bottle. There was no pushing. It was simply her verbally expressing herself.
Mm-hmm. And if you're just joining us, this is U.S. Congresswoman Joyce Beatty explaining about a pepper spraying incident in which she and City Council President Shannon Hardin were both involved here. One last question here. And you've already touched on this a little bit, but as these continue, is the message here just keep it peaceful? Because we see a lot of these businesses already being proactive. They're putting boards up on their windows in case they're broken. So there's some fear out there that it may get worse.
And here's the thing. Fear will not help us. Injustices within the march will not help us. We need to figure out how to march together, how to stand. And that means police officers, elected officials, and that in part is why I went. I didn't want it to be the protesters against those who are elected. I was marching with them because I believe in their cause, and it was a peaceful march. So I will tell you, all my life, I have been about marching and protesting and having the freedom to express yourself. I just want to make sure that we all can do this together because there are a lot of disparities, and these are times of great tension. And part of what we see, you will see other individuals with open carry, with guns, standing on the State House, and all kinds of behavior and things. And it always appears when we're fighting for justice or we're fighting when there's been some racial tension that it becomes more problematic, yet people can stand and say the virus is a hoax and not wear a mask and have guns. And there's never any protesting from the police side. And so I think there was tension there. There were people saying, let us be here and have our way of protesting. But I don't want to confuse the people. I do not support tearing up buildings. And another thing I would say, there are many people with small business owners. They're not tearing up government buildings. They're tearing up businesses that young business owners, people who've been established for years, African-American businesses. We cannot hurt ourselves by tearing up and breaking out windows. That's not a part of a protest and a march for justice.
All right, Representative, we do appreciate you taking the time to talk to us this afternoon, and glad to see or hear that you're feeling okay after that incident. Again, thanks so much for taking the time to chat with us, okay?
Thank you again.
All right, thank you.